Welcome to the second panel of the day, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus. I'm very happy to introduce Brian Canini. Brian is a cartoonist from the bosom of the Midwest, Columbus, Ohio. Here he lives with his wife, Amy, and their 3 kiddos. He creates a plethora of comic series, including the award-winning solo anthology Airbag. He is also an editor-creator of the Eisner-nominated free comics newspaper, The Columbus Scribbler. Welcome, Brian, please.
Hi. Can everyone hear me? Yes? No? Okay. We'll start off real simple. Can you raise your hands if you're a cartoonist? Just trying to gauge the crowd. Beautiful. Gonna make it much easier. Welcome to Developing Productive Comic Making Habits. So today we're going to be discussing methods that I've utilized to be productive and maintain my sanity while being present and balancing work, life, family, and of course, comic making. So some of the stuff that we'll be going over today. We'll be going over journaling, making time count, minimizing sentiment, planning ahead, daily goal setting, rewards of a finished product, and the importance of taking time away. So who am I, aside from the beautiful introduction that I was just given, and what gives me any right to talk about the matter? Well, first of all, Brian Canini. I am also a husband. That's my lovely wife, Amy. I'm a dad of 3 amazing kiddos of varying age ranges, that be 16, 8, and 3. So the whole gamut of boundary pushing. I'm also a cartoonist, and just so you guys don't think that I'm, just going home and doing comics all day, I also have a full-time job. I'm a web developer at Ohio State University for the College of Arts and Sciences. I work 40 hours a week. I work 2 buildings away from here. So I visit here a lot for a number of reasons. One of which is that I'm also one of the founders and editors of the Columbus Scribbler. For those of you who don't know what that is, oh, I love that response. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's Columbus's free comics newspaper. It's dedicated to celebrating the wonderful medium we know as comics and trying to educate and then foster a deeper love and appreciation from the general public. We distribute all over Central Ohio and throughout the United States. And if you're interested in getting a copy, there are copies downstairs in the lobby. And secret, if you check the bottom, there's also a bunch of older copies, so you can fill in the gaps. But Columbus Scribbler is also nominated for the Eisner Award twice, which is the comics equivalent of the Oscars. But I don't have to tell you guys that because you're all cartoonists. But let's see. Oh yeah, and beyond that, I am tired all the time. 3 kids will do that. But with that said, this is all the stuff that I produced last year. We've got 2 issues of the Columbus Scribbler over there. Up top, we've got a variety of anthologies that I had short stories in. Airbag number 2 is a 44-page comic book. Next to it is a graphic novel. We got some mini comics and a process scene. And I can tell you that this year I've already surpassed that amount of productivity. So there's the credentials. I also don't want you to leave with the impression that I am sitting at the drawing board every waking moment. That is crazy. I don't want any of you to do that. Life is important. I actually spend about 12 hours a day, or 12 hours, sorry, 12 hours a day. 12 hours a week at the drawing board. That's an hour in the morning, and I get an hour lunch break, and then I generally have random time to sit down throughout the week. So let's start this journey together. For this, we're going to do some time traveling. We're going to go back to 2008. Ooh. 2008 was a different time. Phones were dumb. Let's see here. Print on demand was still in its infancy. If you wanted something printed, chances are you had to go to an actual printing press. And me, I was a early 20-something living in San Diego, California. I moved there at 21 because, you know, that's where Comic-Con was, so that's obviously where comics were. I needed to be where the action was. And this brings me to my first, like, big point. If you want to make comics and be productive, choose a place that's cheap to live, because otherwise you will spend a vast majority of your time not making comics, but doing other essential things like trying to make money for rent and food. But where I was then, I had just produced my first professionally printed comic book called Ruffians. I say professionally printed because before that I would go to copy centers and make mini comics, and I'd been doing that since I was 18. This is the first time I actually went to a real printer. I chose the Morgan Printing, which was the printer that did the original Ninja Turtle comics, because I love the Ninja Turtles. And I started that in 2006. By 2008, I had accumulated 7 issues, and I had completely run out of money and could not go on any further. My routine at this point was I would wake up, I'd go to my crappy retail job where I developed photos for people on film, because it was 2008. And I would also sell them cameras. And once I was done with 8 hours of that grind, I would come home and I would try and, you know, grind away at the drawing board working on this thing. But by 2008, I had finally run out of money and made the incredible realization that, you know, selling comics is hard, especially when you're doing 1,000-issue print runs. I still have those boxes. So I made the decision that I was going to find a publisher to finish this off. I already had 7 issues. I could show them. Great. Seems like a no-brainer. My problem was this issue right here, which was my first issue, which after 2 years of drawing all the characters, I absolutely hated. I thought it was garbage because as everyone knows, as you keep drawing, you grow, you get better. And I thought that there was no way a publisher would touch it, and it's the beginning of the story. So I went about doing mistake number 2, which is I decided I was going to redraw this and make it perfect because, you know, that's what I was taught in art school. Neat, clean, and perfect. They drilled that and hammered that into my head. And so I got super precious with everything. I overthought every line, every crosshatch, every angle, anything you could think of. I just zeroed in and got slower and slower. And 4 years passed, and I had created 28 whole pages. Now, had I continued down this path at 28 pages for every 4 years, currently, in today, I would have been at 112 pages, which I did finish this book eventually, is about 123 pages shy of the ending. So I'd still be looking at another decade. Obviously, I didn't go that route. We're now in 2012, as time traveling goes, and I came back home for a comic show, which was the Small Press and Alternative Comics Expo, better known as Space, here in town. And I discovered this book, which was written by a friend of mine, Drink More Water by Chris Monday. I feel like every artist at some point has like a game changer that changes their perspective of how things work. This was it for me. This is a collection of a year's worth of journal or diary comics. This is the first time I've ever seen a journal or diary comic. And it was amazing and eye-opening because it was honest. There was no like pretense to it. He just drew what happened during the day, didn't care if it looked great. So he tried his best, but as with everything, sometimes some days are better than others. And so I went back to San Diego and I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this journal thing a try. So here's what I learned about journaling, because I declared that I was going to do it for a whole year. First and foremost, it is complete and utter freedom, because you can literally draw about anything. Strips can be about things that happen during your day, random thoughts, or if you're really tired, just plain nonsense. And I assure you I've done it all. Even the dreaded "I'm bored and did nothing today" comic. But what journaling does for you over time is it makes you more aware of life, because you can only draw that "I was bored and did nothing today" comic so many times until you get angry at yourself and decide, you know what, I probably really should go out and do something just so I have something interesting to draw about. It also gives you a greater self-awareness because, like I said, you can make a comic just exploring who you are as a person. Beyond that, though, journaling also allows you the unique opportunity to experiment. And by that, I mean experimenting with artistic tools. When I started my journaling comic, I had never touched a brush pen before in my life. But I always wanted to, just never had a project that I felt warranted it. And honestly, it's intimidating to pick up a new tool when you're practicing art. So I picked up a brush pen, because the glory of the journal comic, especially when you're doing it for a long period of time, is that you always have tomorrow. If your comic is utter crap today, you can make up for it tomorrow. Which kind of flows directly into what makes journaling so important, is that you're forming a drawing routine. If you're drawing every day, you are going to get into the habit of drawing a comic. You're going to figure out your pacing. You're going to figure out a lot of things just by doing it every day. And it will totally destroy perfectionism, because you don't have time. You have other things you want to do in your life. You don't want to spend it hunched over a drawing board, drawing this one singular moment. And it also frees you up of to be an artist, I have to draw on Bristol board. That's very expensive if you're doing journal comics, because especially if you're doing it for a long period of time, because Bristol board is expensive. So you grab a sketchbook, and that again frees you up because sketchbooks are cheap. Another thing that you'll figure out while doing journaling is that you kind of start to realize that life has kind of a story arc. So this is the book that I ended up finishing after a year, Fear of Flying. It was the first graphic novel I've ever made. It's, not a complete year's worth of things, because I took some breaks here and there because life got in the way. But the interesting thing about it, like I said, it has its own story arcs. I didn't go in planning anything, but what this book ended up telling the story of is my now wife and my long distance relationship, because she lived in Columbus and I lived in San Diego. And in order to actually make everything work, I had to get over my fear of flying and actually get here. And so it basically ended up telling the story of our courtship. And at the end of the book, I moved here, which is hilarious since it actually worked out almost a year to the day. It's strange because I couldn't leave San Diego without a job. Another thing I tried during this time, mainly because I guess I'm a sucker for punishment, is webcomics. Why I chose to do journal comics and webcomics at the same time, I couldn't tell you. But I did try 2 different types of webcomics. My friend wanted to do a daily single gag thing, so I did that with him. And I also decided to do this 1-page full color every week thing. So here's the great thing about webcomics. Webcomics allow you to purge your ideas. Oh, and I thought I had everything to show, but I don't. So, I guess biggest recommendation, everyone has ideas all the time. If you're a creative person, you should always carry around a little notebook and write them down. Get them out of your head. Otherwise, you'll be stuck on a loop or you'll forget something that you thought was amazing. Write it down. These dirt cheap. I also have Google Docs that have a running thing. And I have literally dozens of these at home, and I may not look at them for years, but occasionally I'll flip them open and go, oh, that was a good idea, or oh, that was crap, I don't know what I was thinking that day. But it's great, it's good practice to purge your ideas, and webcomics are great for that because it's short, it's sweet, you have an idea, make a quick comic, get it out of your system. If it turns out to be something you're really interested in, you can always go back and elaborate more. But another thing webcomics do, as well as journal comics, is it gives you kind of the daily goal, if you're doing daily webcomics, mind you, of completing something, which is important. The name of the game is the more you finish stuff, the more you're going to want to keep going, because there is something wonderful and magical that happens when you finish a project. Another great thing for webcomics is deadlines. Deadlines are crucial. Now, with webcomics, you need to get into practice of actually setting a deadline and completing it. For one, it's going to make you feel great. And two, it's going to ensure that you're actually moving forward with stuff. As far as, and deadlines don't strictly have to be like, I'm going to publish on this day. To step away from webcomics for a moment, a deadline could be something as simple as CXC is around the corner and I want to have a comic done for it. So I need to make that happen. Plow forward. But back to webcomics. The other wonderful thing, or double-edged sword of webcomics, is feedback. You post anything on the internet and you're going to get people's opinions. You will find out very quickly if you're funny, if your idea holds water, or if it's total garbage. The internet is not shy because people are jerks when you can't see them. And then if you do these things long enough, you end up with stuff like this. You end up with books. I've done journal comics off and on through the years, 4 or 5 times at this point. I've published 4 books. I already told you about Fear of Flying. Next to it is The Big Year, which is a year and a half of my life, which I always describe as adulthood in a book, because my wife and I bought a house, got married, and then surprise, surprise, got pregnant. As the story goes, Devil's Milk is the one with the bottles, which is the first 6 months with a newborn. And then obviously COVID was a thing. Yeah. The middle section are collections of those full color weekly comics. And then off to the side are the collections of the short little dailies. So point being, if you stick with this stuff, you will actually get an end result of a book or a comic. You do journaling for a month and you have 28 to 31 page comic. All right, so now we're gonna get a little metaphysical here. So this is Art. He is my neighbor. He's in his 90s and wonderful, cheery guy. We went out to eat with him one evening, and he started talking about basically how aging works. And I thought it was truly fascinating. Basically, he was proposing that the reason that as you get older, time seems to speed up, but when you're younger, you seem to have all the time in the world, is a matter of perception. Basically, when you're 8 years old and you're looking at 1 year of your life, that is 1/8 of your life. I am 42 now. When I look at a year, I turn 42 next month. When I look at a year, that is 1/42 of my life. It is a lot smaller scale. Point being, we all know that time is finite, but its speed, how fast it goes, how much time you actually have, is really a matter of perception. The older you get, the faster it seems to go, but nothing's changed beyond how you're perceiving, how you're looking at it, because you are able to look at the breadth of your life. 15 minutes is still 15 minutes, but how you use that 15 minutes, that's important. You can, let me tell you, I have 3 kids. You can do a lot in 15 minutes if it's actually focused. We'll get more into that. First, we're going to do some more time traveling. 2016. Whoo! Phones were smart. And whatchamacallit? Print on demand was actually a thing, actually viable. And I was back in Ohio living in Sunbury, where I live now. And my wife and I just had our baby, as I mentioned before. So where I was, we had a new baby. So I was freaking exhausted. My routine at this point consisted of waking up around 7:30, getting my 2 children up, making them breakfast, seeing my oldest off onto the school bus, taking my youngest to daycare. Then I'd go to my full-time web development job that I hated, not OSU. It was a different job. And I worked there for 9 hours. And then I came home, my family had dinner, and we watched some TV. We put the kids to bed, read bedtime stories, all that whole deal. And then my wife and I would watch some TV together. We'd enjoy our time as a couple. And then Amy is a nurse, so she'd go to bed early. It's typically around 11. And I'd tuck her in, and then I'd go out to my drawing board around 11:30, 12, and I'd kind of collapse on it and work with fumes to desperately try to hash out like a panel if I'm lucky. I was completely burnt out, and something needed to change. So around this time, I actually I would listen to podcasts at work. Because as a web developer, there's nothing else to do. And podcasts were interesting. At the time, I listened to a podcast called The Process Party by Mike Dawson and Zach Soto, who are 2 pretty awesome cartoonists in their own right. And one episode, Zach talked about how he would wake up early and get his drawing done then before he went to work. And I was like, you know what? Why not? I have never been a morning person, but I started waking up at 5 a.m., which was about 2 hours before I had to get my daughter up to get her to school, and that whole ordeal began. So here's the thing about waking up early. Bear with me. Again, never a morning person, complete night owl. But I was able to pull my butt out of bed. And the great thing about waking up early is you are starting the day off as a cartoonist. I start my day off doing something for me. And then I have the whole rest of the day to do all the other stuff. But I start the day off as a cartoonist. It's very similar to waking up early and going to the gym. After you go to the gym, I've already got that done. Check. If I'm able to sit down at the drawing board again, great. But it's not necessary. I'm no longer resenting the rest of my day, spending my day at work going, I wish I was at home on the drawing board. Or even worse, hanging out with my kids, longingly staring at the drawing board, going, I wish I was doing that instead of with these kids that I love. But, and I am not in any way saying that this is going to be for everybody. I get it. 5 a.m. is stupid early, but it is also quiet. The house is quiet. I get to drink my coffee in peace and just focus on working on comics, which is what I'm truly getting at, which is you need to make time count. And part of that is having a comic making time. You need to set aside an hour, 30 minutes every day to make comics. And you need to be consistent with when you're doing it. Now, what is going to happen when you do that is you are going to, over time, get into the habit of, at this hour, in my case 5 a.m., this is when I draw comics. And eventually, it's going to become so much easier because you will have formed a habit to make comics at that hour. And you'll be able to sit down and you'll no longer have this blockage of, oh, I need to be inspired. The muse is not coming. No, because you will have formed a habit around that time frame. I'm going to take a drink of water. Don't tell anyone. Shh. It's top secret. So that brings up the wonderful thing about habits. Habits are something that we form every day, whether they're good or bad. You do not think when you wake up in the morning that I need to brush my teeth. You just do it. You do not think I need to make a cup of coffee. You just make the cup of coffee. You don't even think about it. The goal is to, with the comic making time, is to make comics a habit. And habits can be bad habits are just as easy, if not easier to form. You don't think I'm going to sit down and devour this whole bag of potato chips and binge watch the show. But if you do it enough, you're going to do it. Point being, you need to form good habits, and the environment also plays a factor. If you're setting aside 30 minutes and it's in this noisy, chaos-filled environment, you're probably not going to get a lot of work done because you can't really focus. You need to focus at that time to focus. And the next bullet point, by far the most important if you actually want to be productive, is you need to make baby steps forward. You need to stop thinking in terms of, I need to finish this book. You need to think in smaller doses, because let's be honest, every day you're not going to want to sit down and draw. Some days you just freaking tired. You just want to hang out and watch TV, and there's nothing wrong with that. But on days like that, if you can sit down and still letter or draw panel borders, anything, you are making a positive step forward that's going to get you to the end of the book. Baby steps are where it's at. And the more you do, eventually you're going to finish it. They build upon each other. But the important thing to note when I say environment is you need that time to focus. So turn off your phone. Don't have the TV playing. Get a quiet space. Don't look at social media. These are distractions that will easily, and I'm sure all of you can have done this. You pop out your phone, start scrolling up, 15 minutes has gone by. What the hell was I doing? An hour has gone by. Where was I? So you have to make this time count, and you have to spend it focusing. And let's see, where are we going next? Of course. And if you do that, these are all the comics that I made in the last 5 years. And mind you, these are just comics. This is not including graphic novels. This is not including the newspaper. This is not including all the anthologies that I did. And I try to get into at least 3 anthologies every year. More on that later. But so if you spend your time focusing, and if you take little baby steps toward the end result, you will get there. Which brings us to goals and tracking, the most exciting little list ever. So it's very important to have a goal in mind. Every year I open up a Google Doc and I write down like 5 to 10 things I want to accomplish this year. And it's important to make them tangible. We'd all like for our goal to be, I'm going to make $1 million this year, but it's really hard to carry through. If you can, you know, more power to you. But we could talk after this. But set some goals, whether that's just I want to complete this many books or I want to be in this many anthologies. Checklists are a thing that I absolutely love. The reason for that is because there is something wonderful about checking something off your list. I use a tool called Trello. It's Trello. It's an app that allows you to create lists, and basically you can arrange them in columns. So each column I have like my priorities, things that are at the printer, things that I want to do, things that are done. And within each column, you can have these little modules of, this is my comic project. And within that, you can set a due date, and you can make a little checklist for all the pages that you have to finish. And as you finish the page, check it off. And it's amazing. And it makes you feel like you're actually accomplishing something. I mean, beyond the fact that you're going to have, you know, comic pages being produced. But another great thing to do is you need to make a list of accomplishments. We as cartoonists like to rag on ourselves a whole lot, and it's very easy to get locked in your own head with negative thoughts. Oh, this person's popular, but their work is crap. Oh, my work is garbage. Why am I even trying? That's bullshit. You need to be nicer to yourself, because comics is very hard work. And the fact that you all consider yourself cartoonists is amazing, because comics, let's be honest, is a very stupid way to tell a story. It's, you know, you're bent over a drawing board. There's a billion panels you have to fill. It's never ends. But we do it because we love it. And with that, why wouldn't you love yourself and just make a list of the things you accomplished? I have a list. These are the books I completed this year, but you take it a step further and, hey, this year I went to this convention. It was awesome. This year I gave this comic artist that I truly admire a copy of my book, and he thought it was pretty cool. Some random person online commented about one of my pictures, and it made my day. Just write it down, because you're not going to remember this stuff a year from now. Life has all sorts of other stuff that we hang on to. But if you write it down, you can look back and go, hey, I'm actually, you know, doing some good. I'm actually moving forward. Which I guess goes to the other point, which is don't be so hard on yourself. I'm saying deadlines are important, and they are, if you want to be productive. But bashing yourself because you don't make a deadline is not going to do you any good. What you need to do is go, okay, I didn't make a comic for this convention. Why? Because it's the why that's going to make you more productive. If you can figure out the why, what you were doing in the meantime that wasn't getting the comic done, and fix it, then you're going to be more productive. Now, whether that was, I decided to binge watch this show because it was really cool and I couldn't get away from it, that's fine. Next convention, don't binge watch TV. But if it was, hey, I just didn't give myself enough time for what I wanted to produce, that's fine. Scale back a little. Let's see, where are we going next? Oh, yeah. Keep yourself on your toes. Change is what we're going to talk about next. So you got to change it up. As an artist, you can get very bored. As an artist, we're creatures of habit. We have that pen that we love to use, and we use it every time we draw comics, because that's what comics are. I have to draw on Bristol board because that's what the pros use. So obviously, ergo, to make comics, I have to draw on Bristol board. That is crazy talk. You need to try as many tools as you can. Try different paper sizes. You never know what's going to work. You don't have to do things on 11 by 17 every time. And you'll see I've got a whole scattering of original artwork out here. They're all done in different sizes. They're all using different tools. You can check them out after this. I even draw stuff in sketchbooks still because the pressure's off. But yeah, you have to challenge yourself and constantly shift your approach to how you make comics, because it's going to make you more engaged with your work. You don't want to get bored at the drawing table. You want to be excited, and there's nothing more exciting than trying something new. There's nothing more terrifying too, but it's within the mistakes and the happy accidents that the magic can happen. And so you also want to try different types of projects. Stretch yourself as an artist, as a creator, because that's going to, again, keep you on your toes and keep you excited about writing stuff and making stuff, because you can get locked in and it's no fun. Now, there comes a time in every project where you go, I do not feel like working on this. I cannot look at this character anymore. If I do, I'm going to kill them. And there's where working on multiple projects is your key. If you want to be more productive, you need to have more than one thing going on at a time, because it keeps you going back to the drawing board, because it always gives you something to do. If you're tired of working on your main project, you can jump over to the other project and work on it for a little bit. That way you're still moving forward, but you're not doing the thing that you're stressed out about. You're moving forward on something else. And it's important with multiple projects that you actually make them as far removed from one another as possible. So if your main project is this huge, geopolitical sci-fi epic, then you should probably, that you're doing an 11x17 Bristol board with nibs and the whole works, then your side project should probably be like maybe autobio and a sketchbook with whatever crappy pen you can find. But do with that as you may. Point being, change it up. Now, the most important thing that we're going to go over, possibly, the graphic novel trap. All right, so I am not saying that you should not go after your dream of the epic graphic novel with, 300-page graphic novel. Not saying that at all. What I am saying is that graphic novels are a lot of hard work. And let's put it with the metaphor here. If my goal, I am not a runner, but if my goal was I want to run a marathon this year, I would not wake up one day and run a marathon. I would die. It's plain and simple. Better yet, I probably would get up one day and see if I could make it around the block. So let's keep it short. Short stories are amazing. One, they get you into anthologies, because no anthology is looking for an epic graphic novel. But name of the game is finishing stuff, and short stories allow you to finish things quickly. And you can learn more about yourself as a storyteller and your storytelling ability and ways you can improve upon your abilities by finishing something than by beginning it. Anyone can begin a book, but you need a beginning, middle, and end to actually improve as a storyteller. Mini comics are a great way to go about this as well. I have a scattering of mini comics, and page count is also key, because as I said, finishing the product is what's going to keep you going, and an 8-page mini comic is amazing because 8 pages is nothing. So typical life cycle of a comic is you do about 4 pages and you start getting tired. But the great thing about an 8-page mini comic, 4 pages, you're halfway done. And then you just keep going. But let's talk a little bit more about graphic novels. So the beginning stage is, I feel amazing. I'm finally doing this amazing dream project. This is going to be my best work ever. The ending is, I'm almost done, so close. This is my best work ever. And then there's that whole middle section where you feel like crap and you never think it's going to end. It's awful. So what's the way around this? It's actually really simple. And people have been doing it for years. It's serializing your work. You break it apart. So here is a comic that I've been serializing in 8-page minis for the last, I don't know, 5 years at this point. I can tell you one thing right off the bat. I would have never gotten this far. I'm about over 200 pages in. I've never gotten this far had I tried to just sit down and draw a graphic novel, because I would have given up probably around issue 3. Here's another series that I serialized as 8-page minis. And you know what? I just finished a graphic novel for that. So there is an end at the light at the end of the tunnel. It can happen. As long as you continue to move forward, because the real reward is the finished product. The finished product is what's going to keep you motivated to keep going. And the more times you can get to that finished product, the more productive you're going to be, because success with comics, the success feeds the success. The success of finishing a project is going to make you want to finish another one. And if you're making 8-page minis, it's really easy to get to that finish line. And the more you do it, the more endurance you're going to get. So you can start making longer and longer and longer stories, and it's not going to be as much of a challenge because you've gotten into a good routine. And then the last and probably most important and also counterintuitive thing that I can offer you is time away. You need time to recharge your batteries. Comics are grueling work. You are hunched over a drawing board. Your back aches, your muscles ache. You get carpal tunnel lettering. It's insane. Don't spend 12 hours a day hunched over a drawing board. Your body needs time to recharge, and honestly, you need time to recover. You need time to re-inspire yourself. Go for a walk, read a book, anything. Just spend time away, spend time with your family. Because the reality is, good stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, come from life experience. So don't forget to live yours. Otherwise, you're going to be making very drab comics that aren't filled with life. And just remember, so comics are life, but life is not just comics. Spend yours living it, otherwise you will truly regret it. And a summary, we've talked about focused comic making time. That is key. Keep it the same time every day. And just keep going, and eventually it'll become a habit for you, and you will start getting more productive. Baby steps forward. Any small action you can do to complete a project is a step in the right direction. Daily goals and deadlines are key because they're going to keep you motivated and moving forward. Experiment so that you can stay engaged with your own work. Keep it short, but build to bigger. Start with short stories, build to something greater. Whether that means, if you're serializing, you can actually learn a lot about telling a story in 8 pages and keeping your audience interested than you could when you have, innumerable pages to work with. But the goal, of course, is a finished product. That is what's going to keep you coming back. And never hesitate to take some time away. Oh, and don't wait for a muse to strike you, because that's another trap. You need to, if you want to get stuff done, you need to sit down and do the work. We can waste a lot of time waiting for muses. They don't come all that often. So with that, thank you, and start making some comics. And I probably have like 5 minutes for questions.
Since there's not a panel after this,
Oh,
you could go do it if you need to.
I have all sorts of time for questions. Yeah.
How do you keep friends, especially ones that don't do art and don't understand the time you spend? on them when they want to hang out. How do you keep friends?
How do you keep friends
They
when
you know, not
they don't
know.
make art and don't understand? No, you make time. You make time for friends just like you make time for family, just like you make time for comics. You just have to kind of set up boundaries as to I can't do it this time because it's no different than saying, hey, I can't do it because I'm working. You are working. Comics are your second job. Let's be honest here.
Thank you, that's perfect.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Do you have aspirations of becoming a full-time cartoonist? And if not, and if so, why?
Do I have aspirations of becoming a full-time cartoonist? Yes. I would love that, but that paycheck hasn't come yet. And with 3 kids, it's a long way out because I've got a lot of mouths to feed. Yeah.
I have a question about the journal comics, and I assume that you have this is the anthology comic style, which is a little bit more kind of thought through and things like that, as opposed to the journal comics, which I assume that you have a little bit more of a style that you can get things done a little bit quicker. Can you talk about the difference between the two? And do you feel like they're completely different styles, or do you think that they're more similar than maybe I think they are?
So the question was the difference between journal comics and the anthology styles, and if they're completely different styles or if there are similarities in them. Is that right? In answer to the question, I really am one of those artists that like to change up the style. I feel like the style has to fit the story you're trying to tell. I do have a style for journal comics that I can whip out really quickly now, but I've done 5 years of journal comics, not consecutively, but so I can kind of phone that in when need be. But even with journal comics, I'm still trying new things. My last attempt at journal comics, I was using ink wash for the first time. So that's, but as far as styles go, the style's going to fit the story. That's kind of the perfect comic balance in my eyes. Take that for what you want.
I guess like a follow-up question is how much polishing goes into the journal comics? Or is it kind of like, I'm going to do these, and this is my time in the morning to do this, and then when they're done, they're done. I don't go back and kind of like labor over them.
That is
a little more like rough and kind of.
how much polish goes into journal comics? Not a lot. They're rough. At this point, I'm drawing myself or my caricature of myself and my family, and I've got them down pretty good, so I can pretty much sketch out a circle or a shape and know what's going to happen. I'll usually still, wow, that's not even true. I was going to say I usually will write out the text in pencil just to kind of figure out my thoughts so I can articulate it well, but that's not always the case. Sometimes I'll just go straight pen. It varies from day to day, as journal comics tend to, as to the amount of time and attention that I spend on them. I typically do journal comics at night, mainly because I want to let the day go by and figure out what I actually want to talk about. But there are occasions where I'll do it in the mid-morning or mid-afternoon just because something amazing happened and I declare that nothing could top that moment. Which happens a lot when you have kids. They say the darndest things. Yeah.
Going off of that, how does your family feel about being included in your daily life comics?
How does my family feel about being included in my daily life comics? They think it's neat. At this point, journal comics have become kind of this family album of moments. I've watched my kids grow up in comic form, and it is something neat that I will be able to gift my children so that they can see these little moments and nuggets of their lives and kind of get to know their parents as people. But they're fine with it. Yeah.
Where do you store your original art?
Where do I store my original artwork? In awful places, in stacks in my attic. I don't store original artwork well at all. I mean, I do my best to, not put it in the basement because it floods. But outside of that, wherever I can stack it. Yeah.
Yeah, now that your journals are being published, how much do you think about other people reading them when you write them, compared to the initial complete freedom and exploration of the first?
How much do I think about? Do I self-censor journal comics? We all censor ourselves in some way or another. Whether that's, it's too painful for you to actually want to admit to or whatnot. I try to be as honest as one can be when writing autobio, but autobio is one of those genres that's very shaky as far as what the truth is and what may feel like the truth. I don't know if that actually answers your question. I do my best to be honest, but the human likes to fool themselves. So I'm sure I'm not being completely honest all the time. Yeah.
I just have a follow-up question. Do you still keep a secret journal?
Do I still keep a secret journal? No, I don't, mainly because I don't have the time. With 3 kids, full-time job, and all the other stuff, it'd be impossible. Yes.
I'm not that familiar with your work, aside from just what I've seen, but I also do journal comics, and I'm also interested in process and what I've been learning works for me.
Mhm.
I was wondering, what led you to doing this talk and being interested in productivity, and are you making comics about it, or is this something you're sharing regularly with people?
What has led me to the productivity talk? It started as a way to give back to the community. Let's see here, 2019, I was at CXC in this very room, and I left one of these talks, and there was Tom Spurgeon, who asked me how I was doing, and he asked when I was going to do one of these talks. And I said, as soon as I come up with an idea of something to talk about, I will do it. And then years passed, COVID happened, and I have a lot of experience being productive. As I'm sure you've seen, I've made hundreds of comics over the last decade, and I figured it was a good idea to kind of share what I've learned, because my journey to productivity has been a long one, and I'd love for people not to fall into the same traps that I had. So I started doing this talk at Space 3 years ago. I've done it for the last 3 years, and this year was actually, I proclaimed it was going to be the last time I gave the talk, and then CXC asked me to do the talk a month after Space. So here we are. But as far as making comics about productivity, yes, I do intend on starting to turn this presentation into a comic. That is a future goal on my list starting next year. But yeah, I think I answered all parts of your question. I don't know. Yes, you in the back.
Okay, so as a newbie to comics, my question might sound really simple. So where can one find some of these journal comics that?
Some of the journal comics. Where can someone find journal comics in general, or my journal comics? My journal comics at my website at briancanini.com. Yeah.
Can you talk? So I have tried to carve out time. Yeah, this is my comics time, and there's always something that oh, I have to work on this other thing, and I prioritize that other thing over my comics. And I was wondering if you have any tips for getting into that initial sort of sticking to that habit so that it sticks.
So the question for the recording is, are there any tips for actually getting into the comic making time so that it sticks? I'm gonna go with, I wake up at 5 in the morning, and at 5 in the morning, you're pretty brain dead. And if you're only, at that point, my only thought is I need to make this comic and I need a cup of coffee. So that's what's helped me. But I guess as far as putting other priorities over it, it's tricky. I have no sure, fast way of forming the habit beyond just setting a time, trying your darndest to make that time only about comics, and then just continuing to do it day after day. And eventually it will get easier. Yeah.
So I am pretty much like Newton's law of motion. Object at rest stays at rest, object in motion stays in motion. So I go through horrible cycles of productivity, improductivity. Once I finish a project, starting the next project or just a landmark in my project, it's so hard to get going again. Do you have issues with that, or like do you like stagger projects and goals so that you never really stop, or like how do you help with that?
So the question was, I'm gonna summarize that. How do you get, how do you stop from a project? What's up?
How do you keep momentum?
Yes, how do you keep momentum with projects? There we go. So that I'm going to point to the doing multiple projects at once. There is, in terms of sending stuff out to people and making lists, one of the things that I've done in the past is I've mailed out my comics to my comic heroes, one of whom is Ivan Bernetti, and he gave me some great advice in this term, which is that you never want to stop drawing. So once you lose the momentum, it's next to impossible to actually pick it back up again and get to the same place you were. So the key to having multiple projects running at the same time is that you're never truly stopping. You can take breaks, obviously, you can take breathers and relax and whatnot, but you always have a project going, so you never fall into that pit of, I've finished a project, what am I going to work on next? Because that is an awful feeling, and I know cartoonists that go through a type of depression. I used to do drink and draws with Noah Van Sciver when he lived in town, and that was his big thing. It was every time I finish a project, I go through this pit of depression for the next month, and then I figure out my next project, and then I can start again and feel great. And that was the end of it. Last question. Oh no, that was the end, I think. One more. You.
Brian, do you ever get the itch? Oh, was it that? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go.
What type of external support do you see for your work throughout your life, and how can someone support the cartoonist in your life?
What kind of external support do I receive, and how can someone support the cartoonist? External support obviously is my family and friends. If you're looking for external support, I just say look to your right and left. All of you are cartoonists. You should all be friends. You all have something amazing in common, and cartoonists know the struggle of other cartoonists. So if you're looking for support, reach out to people. We've got Instagram. There's drink and draws in every city pretty much. Festivals and comic shows are a great place to meet people. And then, family. Good partners are going to recognize that you have a passion and love for something, and they're going to support you. As far as supporting the cartoonist in your life, that goes back to one of the, I think, first question which is how do you juggle friends and cartoons. And if they want to support you, then they're going to recognize that you have a love for this, and they're going to give you the time to be able to work on it from time to time. Not obsessively, but an hour or 30 minutes here and there shouldn't be a problem. With that, I say thank you. And if anyone has any additional questions, I'll be at the show tabling at table 41. So we can talk. I can talk all day about this stuff.